John Robbie says.
Good morning, John.
Good morning, Tessa. I love the weather report calling it nippy. It certainly is nippy outside, and sadly it wasn't so nippy for Sundowns. That late goal at home was an absolute killer, but but very, 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 very sad indeed, and also sad to see that crime once again is one of the big stories of the day.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's been a series of different stories that have given us different insight into the state of crime in the country, from GBV to kidnappings of children. It's just so many different facets of it that we need to solve for. But I'm clear that prevention is better than cure here. We're all talking about shoot to kill, but really prevention is more important for me.
Absolutely. Well, I've got another story, Tessa. You know what they say, young men have opinions, old men have stories. So I usually have a story for you from my ancient life and a comment that you might just find current after what we've been talking about. I remember as a student going to work in America in 1973. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Ireland, where I lived, had an arrangement with the US that allowed students to get a J1 visa, it was called, to work for 3 months. And a friend and I were successful. It was a brilliant experience. Can you believe at 18 years of age, I worked as a security guard? I kid you not.
Which part of the US?
One day I'll show you the photograph. You will laugh at my hair more than anything. We worked the summer in Boston, but spent a couple of days in New York on the way. And New York was then painted as the crime capital of America, if not the whole world. I mean, we were very, very scared and excited at the same time. I remember putting, can you believe this, all my dollar notes, which weren't many, in my shoe, in case we got mugged just walking the city. Such was the reputation of New York. And the papers and TV were full of stories of crime and also dire predictions about how the situation would get even worse. Drugs, gangs, drive-by shootings and muggings. You stayed away from New York if you could. It was like Gotham City in the Batman movies. Then in the 1990s, a police chief called Bill Bratton, I actually interviewed him on radio. He adopted a policy called broken windows. Simply it meant you fix the small things that are wrong, like broken windows or illegal, and you're tough on criminals, and that will help crime reduction. That was what broken windows was all about. Mayor Giuliani appointed him, and suddenly crime levels dropped dramatically. And this was hailed and praised worldwide. Broken windows. Google it. It's very, very interesting. The only uncomfortable thing about this, but good, was that alongside New York City, everywhere, and that was the only place that broken windows was initially implemented, but alongside New York City, crime levels were also dropping dramatically everywhere across the whole country, and nobody knew why. It was like a miracle. Then in 2022, researchers published a paper presenting evidence that the legalization of abortion in America in the early 1970s, you'd remember Roe versus Wade was the famous case, and that was 20 years before, and they postulated that this played an important role in the 1990s dramatic crime drop, as it reduced unwanted pregnancies and therefore kids growing up in adverse conditions and turning to crime. I suppose you could call it the law of unintended consequences. Well, in South Africa, as we all know, and we heard in the news, we can no longer pretend that crime is not a pandemic. It is. Every day we hear and read about dreadful stories. We all know it. But thanks to the White House meeting with Donald Trump, we have now had to admit it to the world. As we were insisting, of course, it wasn't just a white genocide. South Africa equals crime. Let's face it. And often it's violent crime. Well, we've had legal abortion since 1996, and it's clear that that alone is not going to have the same extent of positive effect on crime it did in America. But it's still relevant, okay? The lesson from that is still relevant, and here is the point. There are simply too many poor, badly educated, unemployed people in the country with no hope, regardless of the reasons for it. That's the situation. And this, of course, leads to crime. So what we need to do about it, we've got to do something about it. Yes, we need long-term solutions to grow the economy and to improve security and policing, to deal with illegal immigration and to overhaul our education system. Those are long-term initiatives. But short-term, we need to take people off the streets and get them working somehow as an alternative to crime urgently. I mean, a study has showed that work experience in South Africa is worth more than a matric pass certificate. A good track record leads to better and more permanent employment. It is a fact. So along with prevention, and you were talking about that earlier, and the overhaul of the criminal justice system, we need a new struggle in South Africa, okay, for all of us who care about the country, to get people into jobs, any jobs, tax breaks, incentives, calls to people's national pride and patriotism, whatever. How about giving massive publicity and public praise to people who employ new workers? Make it a national priority. Make it cool to employ people. And this will ultimately bring the crime rate down. There are an estimated, listen to this, 4 million companies registered in South Africa. If on average each could employ 2 extra people, that's 8 million people off the streets. Think about it. It's obvious. And that's fewer people then turning to crime out of necessity. The same result that legalized abortions had in America, that it led to all those years ago. We have to stop talking about it and act. The White House crisis meeting showed that it is possible to get South Africans working together when there's a national crisis. Government, business and unions were all present. So why can't we do the same to fight the crisis of unemployment, to work together, all of us, led by government, business and unions? Let's make it cool to hire people, train them, give them experience. Let's honour companies that do that, and that will then lower crime. It'll improve tourism, it'll grow the economy, and will get us back on track. And that, Tessa, is something we desperately need.
I think it still flows with the same thought that prevention is better than cure, and having a healthy, good, workable society that we create is rather the goal than just having to police a society to do
Absolutely.
better. So thank you so much for that thought. Legendary John Robbie with us every Monday morning.
John Robbie says.